Hello, everybody, and welcome to our second episode of Mentoring Insights. Today, our topic is failures through mentors with our guest, Marcus Lim, who will be talking about his own experiences with failures and how he has overcome and faced them in his own career and life. Make sure to comment down your thoughts on your own experience with failures and how you have overcome them.
And he is currently the talent development manager at Lazada. And make sure to stay tuned during our stream and do ask questions in the comments. And yeah.
Yeah, so I'm very excited about this show. Just wanted to talk a little bit about it between us two. Just wanted to ask you, Angie, what your own experiences with failures have been. So maybe we can share about that for a little bit with the audience.
Yeah, I have had my own failures. I have reached like my own failures. Like there must each one of us must have faced it in our own lives. It must be a phase for everyone, especially during the pandemic. I feel like everyone most may face their own failures, keeping up with the drastically different everyday lives. I feel like that's my kind of failures because I kind of feel demotivated and just stick around with these drastic changes makes me feel demotivated. And yeah, but luckily like I managed to overcome that. And make sure to do stay tuned because we're going to talk more about how to overcome these failures. And yeah, I think that's about it for me. What about your failures on your end, Regina?
Yeah, I think that most of my failures, I think, stem from maybe when I don't complete things or when I feel like I'm not doing my best. But um, from my own personal life, I'm not sure how to overcome failures or how sometimes it's difficult to see how failures can help me. And so that's something that hopefully we can talk about today too.
Have you managed to recover from your past failures, or are you still like looking for a way to completely go past that phase of your life?
Yeah, I think that it depends. I feel like depends, I guess you could say, on the size of the failure. If it's something small, I sometimes move on fairly quickly. But if it's something that made like a big impact on my life, sometimes I rethink about it because sometimes I think that it can affect other circumstances, even though it might not. What about you?
Yeah, I'm currently still like looking for ways to completely like go past that. But I think time does help these. Like you can, in my perspective, like to go past these failures, maybe you need time because you're on your self discovering journey, our own journey. So yeah, I think time does help. But yeah, I think that's about it for me. You did say that you go past your failures. Did anyone, do you have like a support system or like anyone help you go above these failures?
Yeah, I think that a support system for me is just the people I'm around, like my family and others. And it's good to talk to them about like what I'm feeling. And
Yeah,
yourself,
it's the same.
feel like do you feel like you have any support system or like how do you handle like talking about it?
Yeah, it's pretty much the same as you. Like I have my family and also my close friends. So yeah, whenever I feel like telling them my problems, I will go to them and I'll receive feedbacks. And yeah, that's pretty much for me.
Yep. So I think that now's a good time to move on to our guest interview, where we'll hopefully be touching more on these topics that we just talked about to give everyone more insights on like the world of failure and also relating it to mentorship. So,
Okay, great.
yeah.
All right, so now we're moving on to our guest interview and Q&A session. Welcome, Marcus. Good morning. How are you doing?
Hello, good afternoon. I'm good. I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm good. I hope that everyone else watching is doing very well too. So, Marcus, today we'll be talking more about failures through a mentor. Maybe to start off, you are currently the talent development manager at Lazada. It's a pretty big role. Maybe you want to share with us like the failures that you had before becoming someone who plays such a big role as that, and also before becoming a mentor yourself.
Right. So it's interesting because I do enjoy discussing and talking about how we overcome failures, because I think failures is where people learn and grow. And I've been very fortunate, right, in my whole career in the corporate world. I've never actually experienced a very drastic failure. And I use the keyword experience because a lot of people actually may or may not experience failure based on how they interpret it. Like when you gave me a list of questions, I was thinking about it. What was the first failure in my life that I remember? And I went all the way back to when I was 8 years old. And it was the very first time I've always been getting A's. It was the very first time I got a B, and I was terrified to go home because I feel like I have failed. Right? I didn't get my straight A's that every Asian family needs to get. Right? But when I went home, and I broke the news to my mom, the way she helped me process that failure was that, oh, okay, so you got B, now you've learned something new about yourself, what happened, and she helped me process through that, as opposed to a parent that could be screaming and shouting and then disciplining the child for not getting that straight A's. So what am I trying to say here? I think people experience failure when their parents, or in a corporate world, their leaders and managers help them process that failure. So a manager can shout and scream when a person fails, or encourage and help the person learn and grow. So I've been very fortunate. My mentors and my managers across my corporate career has always helped me process failure in a very positive way. So much so that when you ask me, did I fail in my working experience? I would say that I don't remember failing, because it doesn't sound like failure to me. So I think that's a place that I wanted to start this discussion. That when we learn to process failure differently, then it doesn't seem too scary. It doesn't seem like failures anymore. Um, but have I, failed to do things? Yes, but they don't feel like very big failures because of the way my manager has helped me process through them. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how does that kind of help me, like in this journey, right, to become a mentor? It's taught me that when my team members or when my mentee fails to do something, it's not about reprimanding or scolding. They know they have failed. Then it's about helping them process, learn from it, and move from. That's my experience so far.
Yeah, that's a very interesting insight because each one of us may view like failures differently. Many would see it as not as positive as you, and it intrigues me to ask, do you always have this mindset, or it's like a process that you've been through before, and then it made you realize that you need to have this positive mindset towards failures or experience that you see it.
Perfect. I think that's a great question, right? I think the idea that failure equals to learning experience is something that I learned very early on in my life. I picked up this phrase, failure equals learning experience, when I was 13 years old. It was this, leadership student camp that I went to, and then they were brainwashing us on all these good principles. But it took time it took time to really understand and practice it. I remember throughout my secondary school and college life, I was still very much afraid of this thing called failure, because of the fear of letting people down, the fear of being perceived as incapable or incompetent. And the reason why I'm bringing us back to my high school, secondary school life is because we learn these things during that stage. And right now, where we are, wherever stage we are at today, what we're doing is we're trying to unlearn what we have learned about failure back then. So for me, it was a process of unlearning what failure meant. And that happened throughout my secondary school and college life. And then at work itself, it's a new process again. So what does that learning look like? The learning is basically when something falls beneath our expectations. So we expected to hit, say, 10 points, and we got 4 points, right? It's really far from the target. Then we have to ask ourselves, why does that make us feel uneasy? Why does that make us feel sad? For me, it's always two things. Number one, it is a representation that I'm not good enough. Number two, I am letting people down. So then the question you want to ask yourself is, this failure, does it really represent my capability? And does it really mean that once I've disappointed people, I cannot win them back again? Does that mean I cannot change what has happened? And most often we realize failing in this one area is not a representation of your capabilities. It is just a measurement of what has happened in this event. So you have to remove yourself from the first point. The second one is that once you've disappointed someone, it then gives you an opportunity to impress them again. Just like how sometimes some companies, when they fail, so there's this pizza delivery company, right, that promises to deliver pizza in 30 minutes, right? And if they don't meet the 30 minutes mark, they will give you a voucher. So if they disappoint you, it is an opportunity to then impress you with something new or something that will win you back again. So the main point is, if you do fail, ask yourself, what is it about the failure that's making you uneasy? And then challenge yourself. Is that true? Right? Does failure equal I'm not capable? Is that true or not? Number two, does failure equal I cannot impress people again? Is that true or not? And most of the time, it's not true.
Yeah, it's very interesting how you use this failure stage of your life as a way to reflect on what you have been doing and about what other people think and stuff that you have mentioned. I'm curious, is there any like a particular stage in your life that you feel like you can no longer feel positive about it? You feel like it's certainly a failure.
Yeah. Okay. So one thing I would say is, during that moment when you fail, you will feel like it's a total loss, right? You feel like a complete failure, and you feel like you can't move on from it. And I realize the very first step is just to acknowledge those feelings and those emotions. And I think those feelings and those emotions are information for us. Sometimes we feel angry, sometimes we feel sad, sometimes we feel disappointed. And it's good to just feel it and acknowledge it and ask ourselves, why am I feeling so angry? Why am I feeling so sad? Then if you if you can actually learn from those feelings, 6 months now when I think back about those events, they don't feel so bad anymore, because I realize that it doesn't define me. So to answer your question, no, there is not a single event in my past that I feel like, I should have really done something like this, or I should have done something different. I don't have that feeling, because I've gotten the learning from it. And for those of you who are watching, if you have one or two of those events that you still feel like, very angry about it, it probably means that you have not processed it completely, and you have not asked yourself, what is the lesson to learn in that event? You need to process that once you've learned the lesson, and then most probably you can move on.
I see. I think the explanation that you said earlier correlated with the questions that one of our viewers just asked. So Anastasia Agata just asked, how can you control your emotions when facing every failures?
Yeah. So how can you control your emotions? The key word here is control, and I would say you don't have to control it. When you're experiencing emotion, let the emotions come. If you feel like crying, cry. If you feel like shouting, shout. Uh, let the emotion run its course. Just promise yourself that at the end of that situation, you will ask yourself, why am I shouting, or why am I crying? What is it that I'm sad about? What is it that I'm angry about? It's all about reflection, really. When you try to control it, what you're suppressing is you're suppressing information from your subconscious mind. So I truly believe that when we feel emotions, it is our subconscious mind trying to tell us something. It's trying to tell us that you're angry, and it's up to us to decide or figure out why is it that I'm angry, or what is it I'm angry about. But if we push it back, then we fail to acknowledge our own emotions. We fail to acknowledge our own subconscious, and that creates problems. So Anastasia, thanks for your question. My short answer to you would be, you don't have to control your emotions. Let it out, experience it, do what you think you need to do. Shout, cry, to feel it. But more importantly, ask yourself, why are you feeling, or why are you shouting, and why are you crying? And what is it about this event that's making you feel angry?
Yeah, thank you so much, Anastasia, for your question. It's interesting how you mentioned ways to cope with your emotions. Do you have any ways to like let go of your emotions by doing something that you like to do? Is there anything
Hmm.
you like to do during, to let go of your anger or maybe sadness?
Yes. So for me, it's sports. I'm a fitness junkie. I love going out for runs. I do this thing called parkour. And I love parkour because it's also about overcoming fears and overcoming obstacles. Now, overcoming fear is really overcoming the fear of failure. And again, the question to ask is, what is it about it that you're afraid of, right? So whenever I feel suppressed or angry or frustrated, in fact, just 2 days ago, I was feeling a little bit overwhelmed and stressed out at work. There's just so many things happening. And I decided, okay, you know what? I'm going to just stop working for a while. Benefits of working from home. I just put on my running shoes and go for a quick jog. And that usually helps me to release the energy and the tension that I was feeling, and then come back to continue what I was supposed to do.
I see. Do you have someone, do you tell your problems to other people too, to hear their feedbacks and, maybe any of these people help you go above the failures or like experience that you go through?
All right. It's excellent question to me because for the longest time, I don't. Right. I keep it with myself. I process it. I try to run it within myself. But it is actually only in the past 8 to 9 months that I found the benefit of actually sharing your experiences and and the feelings that you're feeling with somebody. Right. So when you have failed during a certain event, it is no doubt you will feel the anger, the frustration, the disappointment. It is during this moment that then you will then want to then talk to somebody you feel connected with, or you feel can relate and resonate. And for me right now, that is my manager actually in Lazada. Her name is Sarah. So I can really speak to her because she listens, she understands. I speak to all mentors of mine from previous organizations sometimes. So in the work context, I speak to mostly my work mentors. But in a personal capacity, then I speak to one or two very close friends that I have, that have been friends with me for like the longest time.
I see. How do you shift from being closed for telling your stories to finally you acknowledge like the importance to hear about other people's opinions and telling them about it? Like how do
Yeah,
you mm,
it was tell you, Angie, it was a really hard one. It was a really hard struggle. I think because for the longest time, I attached the idea of not sharing to being independent, right? So if I don't have to share my stories or share my frustrations, then therefore I'm an independent person. So again, is the question, right? Is it true that if I don't share or I don't speak to people, I'm independent? Is it true? And the answer is that not necessarily all the time. So that shift happened to me about 8 months ago, that actually talking to people, sharing my frustration does not make me less independent, but it makes me more resourceful. So it's about switching the belief system. So the first belief was, when I share, I'm not independent. The new belief is, when I share, I'm resourceful, because I'm using the connections and the people around me and the resources around me to help me through a very difficult time. So for those of you who are watching, if you're not sharing, most likely you're also thinking the same way I am, which is, when you share, you're showing weakness. When you share, you're showing that you cannot cope. It's far from the truth. You'll be foolish not to use the resources and the connections you have at hand to help you through something. And sometimes sharing not only makes you more resourceful, but sharing actually inspires other people. Because what you're going through, other people may be going through, and when you share, the person feels like, I'm not alone too. So you kill two birds with one stone when you share your frustrations with close people that you trust.
Yeah, that's very insightful, because I think each one of us have different approaches in, telling other people. Some of us may be okay with it, but some of them don't. So yeah, I think for the people watching, you guys can take a note on that, to consider whether you wanna continue not sharing because of the mindset. Maybe you can think more about that. So we're back to answering questions. So there's a question from Regina. She asked, was there any experience that you had or failure that you thought you could not get past? How did you get past that? I think it's a question that we discussed earlier, but she may missed it. So maybe you can share again a bit of that.
Right. I think the one that comes to mind was 2 or 3 years ago. I started an association with a group of friends in Malaysia, and we wanted to be the national association of the parkour community, and we were trying to organize and get things in order. But unfortunately, after 2 years, I decided to quit it. I could not really see it through, and I couldn't see how to move forward with it. So I had to make a really drastic decision to dissolve it and stop doing that. And there was also other things going on in my life, and I couldn't really balance it. During that moment, I did think that I won't be able to forgive myself or get past that, because I love parkour. I've been doing it for 11, 12 years, and I love the community. And we were really trying to do something great, trying to form a national body for the parkour sport in Malaysia. It took me about a year plus to really process that, and finally said, you know what I learned from there is learning how to manage that was the first time managing a big team, first time managing teams of different personalities and backgrounds. And actually, I did build close friendships as well in that session. We still keep in touch now, but we're not talking about work, which is the association, but we talk about our own journeys and our personal stuff. So being able to process learnings, all right. So the experience was, dissolving an association that we started, and didn't think I could get through it. And how did I get through it? It is really getting the lessons from that experience. And what I realized is, you may not get the lessons all in one night. The lessons may come to you 3 months, 6 months, 8 months later on down the road, and that's fine. So you just keep learning the different lessons from the past experience or past failure, and eventually you will see it as not a failure, but a learning opportunity.
Yeah. Regina, so actually, Marcus have this mindset to see your failures as a learning experience. So if you wanna learn more about that, maybe you can ask more a bit on that, because we just discussed it earlier. But moving forward, we also have a question from Faras. He asked, what would you do if your environment or company do not tolerate failures? Well, this is interesting, since you've been in a your corporate journey has been pretty long, and you've been experienced in that field. Maybe you want to share a bit more on that.
Great. I think that, Faraz, that's a great question, and it's not an easy question to answer, right? So, from my own perspective, the first thing that I also adopt is that um, between cause and effect, I choose to be in the cause. So, what does that mean? If you choose to be in the effect, then we are allowing the environment to make us the effect. So, we become the outcome of our environment. So one way to look at failures is that you are the cause of it. So then instead of the environment creating you, you are creating your environment. So in this situation, one or two things can happen. Number one, if you decide to stay on in that company and continue to tolerate the culture where they don't accept failures, they scream, they shout, they penalize you, and you continue to stay there, guess what? In 1 or 2 years from now, you will learn to be resilient. You will learn to be able to tolerate all these screams and shout and just push it aside and ignore. It will make you a much more stronger person coming out of it. So that's one outcome. The second outcome is that the situation is really bad and it's starting to affect you mentally. And you're starting to go into depression. You start to doubt your capabilities. Then for us, I would say maybe it's time to look out, to go to a different place. A lot of successful people become successful because they surround themselves with successful people. So even for me, right, I have this mindset that failures equals learning experience. So whenever I meet new people and meet new friends, and I detect that all they're talking about is regrets and failures, I tend to keep less in touch with them naturally, because I don't want to continue socializing and mixing with people that does not match my mindset, right? And I gravitate to those who also, like me, see failures as learning experiences. So if you feel that your environment right now does not tolerate failure, then it might be a good idea for you to start looking out or finding a new environment where you can grow healthily, right? So only do it if your mental health is starting to be affected and you recognize that you're going to depression. And what are the signs? Number one, everything you do, you doubt, right? You put in a Arial font and you wonder, will my manager scold me for an Arial font? Or you put in a sentence and you wonder, is this sentence the right sentence? If you start to question yourself on all these small things, then that environment may not be suitable for you. Yeah. So one or two situations. One, you come out becoming a very strong, resilient person who can take any fire. Or two, if it's affecting your mental health right now, you should leave or find a new environment.
Okay, moving on. Do you think it's hard to apply your mindset in a business setting, because it must be different, to approach these failures yourself and to be able to directly implement it in your company? I think there must be some restrictions, I guess.
Okay, yes. So when it comes to companies and corporate setting, that's why I say I've been very lucky. Every company that I went to, the leaders, the managers have similar mindsets, right? Whereby if an employee fails in something, uh, the employee knows. The employee knows that they have failed. So instead of dwelling in that, they decide to talk about, okay, how do we move forward and how do we problem solve? So in a culture like that, it's very easy to then continue practicing this mindset. Now, as a person grows, they become leaders of their own. And if they continue propagating the same mindset, then that culture will continue to stay. But number two, because we believe that failures are learning experiences, corporate cultures that have weekly check-ins will catch the failures before it becomes too big. So a lot of companies do this, right? They do small experiments to see whether these experiments work or not. And if it works, they continue to make it bigger and bigger and bigger. So it's very, very seldom you see organizations allow an employee fail super big, because they will have weekly or monthly check-ins just to make sure that progress is running. And if progress kind of goes out a little bit, they immediately correct it and try to guide that person back to the right path. So I feel like corporate companies who have this kind of culture tend to minimize the risk of huge failures and allow room for employees to experiment and fail a little bit.
Yeah, that's very interesting, and it's very nice to see everyone in the comments to see if can resonates with you very well. To quote on Ren, he said that honestly, it's really not easy, especially the realization and accept the part he can't move further. For that matter, I think he's referring to the failures. So that's that. I think I wanna
Can I just say,
yeah.
thanks for watching, Ren Chua. He's an old friend of mine, so thank you so much for
Oh,
watching,
I
and
see.
good to
Thank
see
you
you
for
again.
watching.
Thanks for your comment.
Yeah, I think I'm going to move forward to Sashi's question right now. So he asked, just want to ask about mentoring a little. You mentioned that you have worked mentors earlier. Why is it important, and is this something that you intentionally pursue?
Yeah, I think mentors are super important. I mean, ever since from the beginning, I've always seeked out mentors. I don't have one; I have many mentors. In fact, at different phases of my life, and I still catch up with most of them. Mentors are important simply because we don't have eyes behind our back of our heads, right? We can't see what's behind us. Sometimes we can't even see what's around us. We most of the time we focus on what's in front of us. So mentors help us just kind of show us that, hey, there's something behind you or something that you didn't notice that you might want to pay attention to and grow. So really, the biggest value that mentors have, in my life at least, is to give perspective and to help me see different things. They're not there to help you solve your problem because mentors cannot help you solve your problem. You have to do it yourself, but they give you options. Earlier on, Angie, in my profile, she wrote that I'm an NLP practitioner as well. And in NLP, or neuro linguistics programming, we believe that a person can only become more effective when that person has more options. So usually, I will come with a problem, and I say that the only way to solve this problem is option A and B, but I don't know what to choose. Please help me. Right? A mentor will say, okay, that's interesting. Let me ask you a few questions, blah, blah, blah. And then suddenly the mentor will say, have you considered option C? And I'm like, oh, I didn't notice option C. Now because I have three options, I have more information and I have more a way to decide which one is better. I become more effective and more resourceful. So anybody of you who are looking for mentors, or if you want to be a mentor yourself, I think a very important aspect is as a mentor or being mentored, you want to find somebody that can give you more options to your problems. If the person gives you less options, then uh, I would say not a very valuable mentor, right? So look for people that can give you perspective and give you more options, because with more information, you can make a better informed choice.
Yeah, that's a very insightful take on mentors. And now moving on, we have another question from Anastasia, and her
Yeah.
question now is regarding mentees. So she asked, I want to ask that as a mentor, how can you help the mentees to get them out from failures?
Oh, wow. Okay. I think I will go back to what I mentioned earlier, which is as a mentor, our role is really just to give perspective and to share. So helping mentees get out of their own failures is really asking about uh, uh, number one, what are you feeling about this failure first? And if the person says that I'm feeling angry, okay, what about this failure are you angry about? Or I'm angry that I didn't do A, B, and C. And then we say, if you didn't do A, B, and C, what does that mean about you? And most of the time, it's about their self-worth, self-esteem, or about disappointing people. And again, the question is it true that if you didn't do A, B, and C, it means that you are lesser? If you didn't do A, B, and C, it means that you have failed a person completely. Is it true? And most of the time, it's not, right? So then the question is, what can you learn from it? And what can you do to change the scenario? Failures are always great place to reflect and learn. And failures are also a great way to understand your emotions, and that's what I would do as a mentor. All right, of course, this is very theoretical. When we're having the conversation, we'll see where it goes and how it goes. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that that's really important for all the viewers watching. And as a mentee, I can relate to having a lot of failures and getting help from my mentor in order to solve them and move forward from them. I think that that was probably the last question for this live stream. I just wanted to thank you um, for coming in into our live stream for our second episode and all of the insight you gave and all of the personal insight and like the insight from your own career. So it was great having you. Just wondering if you would like to talk about anything that you're working on or wanted to shout out your Instagram.
Yeah, guys, thanks so much for having me. It's been a pleasure just talking and discussing about different things. And the viewers who are watching, thanks for coming on. I've been working a lot on building a self-help tutorial videos on parkour. I really like parkour because it helps us overcome fears, overcome obstacles. You can check my Instagram at coach.marcus23. Yeah, it's right there. Thank you so much for putting it up. And if you want to connect with me, please DM me on Instagram, message me on LinkedIn. Uh, Always happy to talk about anything you like, or in this case, talking about overcoming failures. If you have a question in mind and you want to get a perspective, happy to share my perspective with you as well. Thank you so much, Regina and Angie, for having me on this Leaderonomics show.
Thank you. Okay, guys, so thank you so much for watching our second episode of Mentoring Insights and Failures Through Mentors. I just want to shout out Marcus for being a great guest, and I want everyone to keep an eye out for the next episode. We're gonna play a video on Mentor Cloud, so if you're interested, keep watching that. It's gonna talk about how you can connect with mentors, which I think is something that everybody should check out.